I'm the epitome of dudes who thorough. Lyrically more sweet 16 than do Blue Devils. Influenced by the Juice Crew era, then corrupted by the street cause my crew had juice in the ghetto. I held weight on a few different levels. I could get more depicted, but fuck that, niggas is telling. You hear the truth when you listen to Mega spitting poetic. This ain't a replica, this is authentic. Skill I was born with it.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Maximilian Must Know. This is the 47th episode of this show, and shockingly enough, this is the first Dior scent that we're looking at. Now, it's not the first Dior scent in my collection. I was wearing Fahrenheit when I was in 7th grade in 1991. Since then, I've pretty much owned every flanker aside from the summer releases, and I've also owned every version of Dior Homme. The Sport, the Intense, the Originals, the Reformulations. I don't have the Dior Homme Cologne yet, the light blue juice that was released earlier this year, but I will be adding that to finish the collection. One of the scents that I sort of bypassed and avoided because I thought it smelled a little too old-fashioned for me was Eau Sauvage. I looked at that as a real classic eau de cologne, citrus, herbs, and I just wasn't into it. I'm more into that now, but Eau Sauvage still just isn't really a fragrance that gets me going. Maybe as I get older, I'm 34, maybe that will change and I'll come around, but not yet at least. But I was in Sephora not too long ago and saw they had released a flanker to Eau Sauvage. Not the first one that I've seen, but I thought this was I saw this was an Eau de Parfum concentration and my ears sort of perked up. I think Dior, when they do more intense versions of scents, whether that be Dior Homme Intense or Fahrenheit Absolute, they do a good job with them. So I sprayed some of that on my wrist and I was really into it. It took me a while to actually come around and pick it up, but recently I broke and I did pick it up. Now, before we talk about the scent, let's talk about Dior just for a little bit. Obviously a house that many reviewers and viewers love. Many would say probably that either this or Chanel is their favorite designer house, but you don't hear too much about the history of the brand, and as my audience is well aware of, that's something I really enjoy talking about. Christian Dior obviously was a French designer, and what he's sort of known for and famous for, along with some other French designers like Puget and Lucien Lelong and Pierre Balmain, was introducing what's called the new look. And the old look was sort of this very conservative pre-World War II garb. Europe was at war. Obviously, with a situation like that, it impacts everything going on in the nation. France was obviously either under German threat or rule for most of World War II, and that sort of fear and oppression came through in the pieces that designers were putting out. Lots of very drab and plain fabric-conserving pieces, and Dior and these other designers really changed that by making women look like women. They made full skirts that fell below the mid-calf. That was sort of the Dior signature. And these skirts accentuated a woman's bust and hips, and it allowed more curvy women to shine and sort of remove the stigma that you need to be rail thin to be considered sexy. Now, obviously, that sort of returned in the 80s with these stick-thin models who only drank Tab and blue lines of cocaine, but that phase, I hope, for the most part, is past again. And so basically Paris, which was really crestfallen after World War II, again rose to prominence and regained its seat as the fashion capital of the world, along with Milan, thanks to the innovation of Christian Dior and these other designers in their new look. Now, as far as perfumes go, Dior started early there as well. Most folks say that Dior perfume started between 1947 and 1948 with their first release, Miss Dior, a fragrance inspired by Christian Dior's sister, Catherine Dior, and it was a big hit all over Europe. They've had many heads of perfumes over the years, including Pierre Cardin in the early 50s. And since then, Dior Perfumes has released over 140 bottles. As of now, they fall under the LVMH group, obviously Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy. The original Eau Sauvage was the company's first stab at men's fragrances. It was released in 1966 by perfumer Edmond Rantiska, and as I previously stated, released as a classic eau de cologne. It was reformulated in 2009 and re-released, and since then it has had 3 flankers follow it, most recently, of course, the Eau de Parfum version. This fragrance was made available around May of 2012, and it comes in 50 ml and 100 ml bottles. You can typically find the 50 ml available for about $70 and the 100 for about $90. I picked up my bottle at Sephora for $90 and a dot. Now, the perfumer on this project is Dior's in-house nose, Francois Dimache, and I'm sure many of you guys know Dimache is an all-star nose. Besides doing a ton of Dior's best scents currently on the market, including the highly coveted Private line, he's also done scents for Acqua di Parma, Kenzo, Fendi, and many others. 3 notes make up this extremely simple composition. You've got bergamot at the top, myrrh resin in the heart, and dry vetiver root at the base. It doesn't get much more simple than that. As far as your packaging goes, very simple bottle, black with a little ribbon here that says Eau Sauvage Parfum, natural spray. Your information is going to be on the bottom. Very basic box. Nice, simple, beautiful bottle. A lot like the original Eau Sauvage bottle. Black sort of ribbon going across it. Not a ribbon, it's actually hard on there, metal, and a magnetic cap with the same sort of pattern and some info on the bottom. Really nice, nothing too special, but really handsome, and it works. You know, that's all you can say about it. It's sort of a classic cologne presentation. Now, as far as how this smells, it's absolutely fantastic. You know, if you watch enough of these reviews, or you're just into fragrances, the way that some reviewers are, then you sort of understand the difference between what designer scents smell like and niche scents smell like. At the most fundamental levels, niche perfumers are usually going to have a bigger budget. They're going to be using more expensive materials for the most part, and they're not going to be too concerned with their fragrances having such a universal appeal. Because of that, most designer scents are going to be crowd pleasers usually, that don't stray too far away from what an Axe body spray smells like. Sometimes they'll be really well done and just smell so good that you'll want to own them because of how well done they are. But more often than not, once you start really getting into niche, it's hard to go back to designer stuff and be as engaged and as interested. The company that sort of blurs the line the best, I feel, is Christian Dior. Chanel and Hermes are not too far behind, but they're not as close as Dior is. And I'm not even broaching the private blend stuff. I'm, for the most part, talking about the stuff that's even available at Sephora or department stores. Fahrenheit sort of set a trend with the petroleum note. Dior Homme did the same with that lovely buttery iris note. And Eau Sauvage did the same way back when, as being one of the first citrus designer colognes available. And to me, at least, it seems like with this release, they're continuing that trend. I don't get a lot of the bergamot here that's supposed to be up top. It's there, but it's very sharp, and it's really just at the opening of this fragrance. I wouldn't consider this concentration of this fragrance to be a citrus fragrance. Instead, this scent to me is more about the myrrh resin in the middle and the dry vetiver at the base. It creates a really mature, earthy, powdery vibe that's different from anything else I've ever smelled. And to me, this is a niche quality fragrance. It's a very high quality myrrh, and the way that it reacts with the bergamot and the way that it reacts with the vetiver just creates incredibly deep and dark tones that, to me at least, are just breathtaking in this fragrance. And this sort of progresses on your skin. It starts to pick up old and aged vanilla tone. It said it almost smells like what really old paper smells like, vanilla and maybe just a touch of papyrus. These 3 notes together in unison, the bergamot, the vetiver, and the myrrh, really are complex and in different stages smell beautiful in completely different ways. It's a great earthy scent. But to me, this isn't a unisex scent. This is for mature men, I would say 30 and up, and probably could be worn all year round. But I think this is great in the summer. I think that the myrrh will do well in the colder months, and that the vetiver will do all right in the warmer months. This is an eau de parfum concentration, so 2 sprays is probably going to be more than enough, maybe 1 behind each ear. I'm going to give this fragrance a 9 out of 10. If you want to sort of understand the more sophisticated smells that you can find in niche perfumery, this is a great scent that starts to veer away from those typical department store scents into notes that are a little different and more intense. I don't love the presentation here. I sort of wish they had updated the Eau Sauvage just a little bit more bottle-wise. I do dig the magnetic cap and the darker bottle and the olive green juice, but I really like the way that they present Dior Homme, and I sort of wish that they could have done something different with Eau Sauvage to make it look a little better. But it's hard to detract from the overall wonderful scent because of that. Dior's done something new here, they've done something adventurous, and they've done it in an under $100 package, which I find to be unbelievably impressive. So solid 9 out of 10. I would recommend picking this fragrance up. When I do my full starting lineup, this probably will be somewhere in there, maybe as a signature or as an upper class scent. We'll have to see. I would think it would be there. So thank you so much for watching this episode. Just so you guys know, next week there will be 3 episodes. We will have, in the middle of the week, my sort of shaving grooming episode where we're going to look at a men's moisturizer that's fantastic and under $20. Then later in the week, we're going to have part 2 of my fragrance collection, fragrances 25 to 50. And then next weekend, we'll either be looking at a fragrance from Tom Ford's private blend line, or from Healy, or for Frappin. I haven't decided which one I'm going to do yet, but probably something like either Tom Ford's Oud Wood, or Frappin's Speakeasy, or possibly Healy's Coco Bella, the new fragrance of theirs. So one of those will be up next week, definitely. And we'll have 3 videos next week, and probably 3 videos every week until I finish my collection off. Anyway, thank you so much for watching another episode of Maximilian Must Know. I obviously am Maximilian, and
fast lines. I got a simple mastermind, blast the rhyme. I show you why you last to climb. Born conscious MCs, it's disaster time. We there to strike. There ain't no psych to with the terror like prepare the mics. For this Christ in the paradise, the rarest nights, giving you Michael Moore, this Fahrenheit, Ed is right. Thought of this verse up on a Paris flight. Trials for blow, you ain't allowed to know. Foul and low, no books, wild will flow, a while to go.